So I've been coordinating this part of the project, and I am arranging this set of training for teaching. We're starting today with Arwel, who will be speaking in a minute. Next week, we have a presentation from Edwin, who will be talking about the Jan Moore Award. So, and looking into conservation. And then there'll be 4 sessions following that, and into these aspects in a bit more depth with ideas of how we can implement this by being outside in the open air. So a few clips for this, we've already got them. So there'll be an element of me speaking to clips of me out in the field and doing things which I hope will inspire you. So I will also be looking. So we'll start with Arwel, talking about everything that you need to know about taking children outside and also why we do it. And today we have Becca too, who is the community engagement officer. So this will all be happening, and invitation will follow. So thanks to Arwel, and he will be, and for Gwynedd and Anglesey, and I'll hand over now to Arwel. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone's fine and healthy, and Happy New Year to all of you. It's nice to see some familiar faces, and unfortunately, this is virtual training these days, and face-to-face contact has gone. I'll share the screen with you now. Can everybody see? If you can nod, if you can see just before I start going on. So what I have is an overview, really, of education visits to help you to overcome the new challenges that face us as we go forwards and be part of this interesting project, a really important project, I think, in schools that are on the slopes of the Carneddau. I'm extremely pleased that we can show this to you. While we're doing this, it'd be nice to know who we have. So I don't know if you can unmute yourself a minute. I know some faces aren't so familiar to me. So can I start with Ellie? You, if you can unmute, please.
Hi, do you mean me?
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm Heli Dewey. I've just started a new post with Gwynedd, which is a social enterprise based in Llanrwst, and we're looking at using the Gwynedd Forest as a resource for social prescribing, and that can include working with schools. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. I'm based just up the road from you, Harry. I'm the Pitman PH at the Outdoor Education Centre just up the road from you. So call in at any time once the current restrictions allow us to do
fantastic.
so. Yeah.
Great.
Hannah.
I'll turn to Hannah. I'm Hannah. I'm a teacher and primary school, and also I'm Arwel Lewis. I work with Hannah in Llanrwst, and I've been there for 17 years now. A lot of time, too long, in fact. No, it'd be nice to retire. Yes, me too. Ali? Who else do we have? We have Anais.
Is that me, Anya?
Oh, sorry, Anya, sorry.
Anya. Dwi'n Anya and dwi'n gweithio. Yeah.
I work.
Hello. Dwi'n siarad dipyn
I
Cymraeg.
speak a bit of Welsh.
I come from Ireland originally, ond dwi'n byw yn Conwy a
I live in
dwi'n
Conwy.
gweithio yn ysgol Port of Felon
And I
fel
work in
cymorthyn
Ysgol Port
dosbarth Durban.
in a reception class.
Yeah, dosbarth Durban.
Yes, a
And
reception class. And
dwi'n hoffi yn fawr tu
I very much
allan.
like going outside.
Yeah.
Who else do we have? Who else do we have? I can see RJ. I don't know who RJ is. Hello, I'm in Ysgol Different Conwy for some years, and I'm on the video at the moment. And we're seeing the head of department. So, and the teacher who does a lot of open air work. And then Mr. P. Jones. Hello. Oh, nice to see familiar faces. Thank you very much for that. I don't know if you can see really the views we have today. As we know, learning takes place everywhere, and we all need to overcome new challenges and adapt new ways of working. And I really believe that taking learning beyond the classroom is a vital tool to help deliver the curriculum safely and support learning and children's welfare, not just children, but staff too. We're here to support you, help you to understand how you can use learning outside the classroom and adapt to the current situation, and hope that we can establish strong foundations moving forward, so that we can root learning outside learning in every part of education across the region. So this is what I have. Raise awareness of the main points and the requirements of holding visits, and understand how open air learning and visits lead to a wide range of outcomes for children and young people. Understand how your school or your institution reaches the requirements of the national guidelines, raise awareness of policy and guidelines for visits, and raise awareness of the guidelines for education visits and the coronavirus, and finally assess risk assessment. So to be sensible to look at this a bit differently. This is a familiar picture for some, perhaps, and very relevant with the weather that we have at the moment. So where do we as a service sit? We sit under the North Wales Open Air Service. We're part of the service, and we have residential settlements, and I know that we have staff from Gwynedd used to come to the centre in Cemar and Pentrach in Cymar, and then we also relate to an advisory service on educational visits, and what we're looking at, the real excitement, the real learning. So what is our work? Well, first of all, in protecting you as leaders and governors and the local authority in terms of secondary risks. How do we do that? Schools use a monitoring system called Evolve. We are here to give technical information of open air, and we also give you good practice during education visits, and we're here to clearly we are here to offer training. All the trainings is virtual at the moment, and we are here to help you and your schools to improve and hold visits of high standard. So we're talking about visits. We're talking about this range of different activities which happens in schools. Just before Christmas, we sent a report to Welsh Government, and the idea, as you would think, of a number of visits taking place is down compared to the previous year, substantially, as you'd imagine. And we know that I really believe that what we can take children outside, and this is an important part of their education. Here is an educational visit in the 1930s, and compare that with this. Which would you prefer your children to have, the first or the second? And what we don't want, but health and safety, to be used as an excuse, or if you like, to deny children from going out. I believe fairly strongly that this slide is unacceptable because it isn't linked to positive attitude to life. It doesn't develop life skills. And in terms of safety, the children are stuck to this green thing. And so if they cross the road and a car came, they would have no hope. We want to look at health and safety in a more sensible way. Does anyone know, those perhaps who've done the courses in the past, who said this? Health and safety is used as an excuse often to prevent children from taking part in exciting activities. But organised activities have been well organised, give them benefit. If you wrap your child in cotton wool, then clearly they won't understand danger, and the danger itself doesn't damage children, but protecting children excessively or activities that haven't been well organised can do harm to them. Does anyone know who said this? Usually we get Bear Grylls or somewhere, but it was the health and safety executive who said this. So this comes and says, no, we must take children out. It's important that you do so. And this agrees with that. We don't believe in a concept of health and safety extremely, though you have to wrap children in cotton wool. And our argument is that scratching a knee or turning an ankle or doing something challenging, exciting is not only acceptable, but it's something positive and indeed essential. And we need to prepare children to face a dangerous world. This is extremely relevant now. We need to prepare children to face a dangerous and complicated world. We need in this world, this country, exciting, healthy children more than ever before. And this was said by the chief executive ROSPA, Royal Society of the Prevention of Accidents. And it's important. And for those who work in education with schools, this is extremely important. We need to look and discuss visits, the possible advantages and barriers. So rather than speaking through all of this, what do you think are the advantages of taking children on education visits? What are these advantages for taking our children, young people outside? Anybody? Develop skills? Yes. Great, improve confidence. Thank you, Hannah. Can I chip in? Freedom?
Developing social trust.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Developing social connections.
Social connections, yeah, absolutely. Connecting the school to the community as much as connecting and young people, you know, people seeing young people out doing stuff. I think it's really, really important, you know.
Nature connection, cysylltiad â natur.
Connection to nature.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone else?
I've broadly put these down. Dwi 'di roid hein
I've put these down
i o ran y buddion I bobl
in terms of the advantages to young people.
mwynhad,
First and foremost, enjoyment,
sgiliau arwain,
leadership skills,
heriau newydd,
new challenges,
datblygu'n
developing confidence,
datblygu'n gymdeithasol,
social development, health and fitness,
rheoli peryglon,
managing dangers, risks,
a'r hunain barch
and self-respect.
Allech chi roid unrhyw
You can put
ydych chi am
any visit that you do
ag yr penawdau yna.
on these headings.
Ma' 'na chydig o waith i digwydd yn Lloegr.
There's a certain amount of work's taking place in England, and I'm going to play this bit now, if it works.
Dach chi'n gweld hwn?
Can you see this?
Croeswch bob dim a fyny bach.
So cross fingers for a bit.
Here goes, here goes. Mae'r hamsters yn gweithio'n gyflym iawn.
The hamsters are working very hard.
Dach chi'n gweld hwnna ydach?
Can you see this? Can you?
Does dim byd i newid eto.
Nothing's changed yet.
Rwan?
Now,
Dal gweld yr un syniad.
still seeing the same pictures at the moment. Hold on,
Mae'n dal i cychwyn.
go back to the start.
Beth am rwan?
What about now?
Ella bo' chdi angen cau hwn.
Perhaps you need to close this and share a different screen
PowerPoint i hyn.
if it's not in the PowerPoint itself.
Ch'mo' be-
You know what? What I'll do is I'll go back to the introduction.
Dach chi'n gweld hwnna rwan? No?
Can you see it now?
Na,
No.
na, falle rhywbeth arall ti
Perhaps there's something else you need to do
O, mae'n iawn.
computer chdi i gadw
with your computer to allow it to share it,
cyflwyniad.
the presentation.
Ie, dim problem.
No problem. What I'll do is then I'll share the link about what happens in England. I'll share that with you at the end of the presentation. Yes, I've sent it out. So you see this back now. The link is there, and I'll send the link to you. So why open air? Why, when we talk about open air education, we talk about learning in the open air. Go back for physical benefits, health and welfare of children and young people. We're talking about learning in the open air, and it develops ambitious and able learners, and open air learning relates to understanding the climate crisis and sustainability, and developing this meets with the themes of education. So we're talking here about health, welfare, children, ambitious learners, and ethical education. And what we do as a sector is taking our children out, weaves in to these other aspects. This is something to be considered. 3/4 of British children spend less time in the open air than prisoners. And this is, we really need to consider this and look in our next period, and perhaps some children should have opportunities to go out and do things outside the class. We all know the cost of this, to the health service, 94 million because of sitting behaviours and the children's headline news. And we see that is extremely important. What we want is inspirational outdoor learning for all children and young people across North Wales, across Wales. So this is where we're here to help you. We all know that we need to extend our children outside their comfort zone. That's where real change happens. I know we've seen it with a group of pupils from different Conwy and Dolan, where it's I've seen what we do walking into areas in the Cerneddau and Snowdonia in general, and the change in their spirits and taking children out of their comfort zones. In order to this, we need to know what the legal expectations are. And the important thing to remember is a legal expectation is what is reasonably practical, not perfection, because no visit is going to be perfect in terms of its planning. The legal duty of the employer under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, the authority must give guidance, training, and appropriate further advice. Our work is to offer the advice and opportunities to have the visits as safely as possible with systems that support you in challenging situations. So if you think over the last year, the change that's happened, looking about the financial implications rather than what's happening. So what we have in terms of relevant advice and guidelines, well, every school will have a school's visits, education visits policy. Every county has an employer's guidelines, and also we have the national guidelines. So we look at the national guidelines and the visits policy, and it depends on which council in terms of the employer's guideline. A lot of you are aware of this already, but what we have in terms of national guidance is guidance, best practice guidance endorsed by the Welsh Government and then endorsed by the Health and Safety Executive, teacher unions, unions, and so on. And this is a guideline, and I'd encourage you, if you haven't looked into this guidance before, to go to this website, www.oeap.info. Work is taking place at the moment to translate the national guidelines. Part of them is alive, doing bilingually at the moment, and there'll be more guidelines in due course will be available in Welsh and English on the guideline. If you go to Essential Guidance, you will see there visit leader and so on. So a lot of work has happened on this over the last year to developing national guidance in terms of what we've learned from coronavirus, COVID-19 changes to some of the guidelines. So I would encourage you to go to the national guidelines. And then your educational visits policy of your school, this was based on the Evolve template, should be concise, not too much paperwork. It's important that all staff implement the policy and that it reflects what's happening on the basis of the policy, and to include the fundamental arrangements in terms of managing and reducing risk in arranging educational visits. For those of you who are coordinators in schools, the policy, I hope that very much that you're aware of your education visits policy, that you've seen it. Good news, perhaps, for this year is that no changes have taken place to the policy. It's very probable that there will be in September, following the lessons that have been learnt from COVID, and the changes that we foresee are things like financial ones, insurance for traveling, so on. But at the moment, the policy is up to date, and it's important every school puts it before the governing body and then adopts it for last August. It's a current policy for a year. So major change has taken place. To draw your attention to is that all the relevant information about policies, guidelines, procedures, and so on have moved from Evolve to, you see at the bottom, the new SharePoint website. And what is on SharePoint are relevant documents, and then for each county there are individual documents for that county. From SharePoint, you can then go to Evolve for your planning work, for your visits. So the starting point should be SharePoint. You'll see the policies, guidelines, procedures, risk management, and resources for education, learning, and skills on these in these 5 folders. To get access to this SharePoint, you need to go into this part and ask for you to input your hub and details, and then you'll get access to the guidelines. I'm just open one file here.
And you can see in the guidance notes, we've got things like operational guidance for COVID-19, managing social distancing, cancelled visits, travel insurance, unaccompanied expeditions, Duke of Edinburgh, and so on and so forth. They're continuously updated. We meet on a monthly basis to update the guidance in here. It's really, really important that you actually go into SharePoint and have a look and follow the guidance that's in there.
The golden rules in terms of planning and holding educational visits. Take care that you have an educational visits policy that matches that of your authority, and don't go forward with a visit unless you have received a sufficient permission either from the head teacher or the local authority. And the reason for this is that if someone happens to have an accident, your employer, that is the authority, will be able to support you. In such cases, you'll be judged according to the policy of the employer. It's important to stress this for all schools. So stop me at any time if you want to ask questions. Every school should have a visitor.
And the role of the EVC is to seek further advice and to adopt a positive attitude towards educational visits and be of assistance to educational visits and you as visit leaders.
They should offer advice and procedures for staff. Make sure that staff understand the advice and procedures, and do monitoring work to make sure that the workers follow the guidelines, procedures, and so on, and to keep appropriate records. If you don't know who your EVC is, and the review work in terms of monitoring what happens, these are the main duties of the Educational Visits Coordinator. Head's responsibilities, you can see the head must have appointed a coordinator and approved every visit beforehand, that they have proper and effective support structures in the event of emergency or critical incidents, and they have access to specialist advice from their educational visits advisor. So a lot of writing on this page, but remember those main things. Question for you now: what do you expect the appropriate qualified leaders to have? Over to you. What aspects do you expect your visit leaders to have?
First aid training.
First aid,
Yeah.
Profiad o fynd ar ymweliadau.
Experience of going on previous visits. Wow, yes. It's easy to put it up now, I think. Experience, qualifications, and common sense. So in terms of experience, talk about working under training, up-to-date and relevant information about the location and activity, the pupils and the activity itself. Qualifications, AVC, first aid, as you say, and leadership qualifications for any, and common sense to be mature, responsible, confident, sensible, and have a quiet nature to lead the group. A lot of text on this screen now, but this is what's in the policy.
Visit leaders, school-based visit leaders.
To be responsible for safety and behaviour of those who take part, to get the approval of the head teacher for the, that's part of the policy, and if you're leading an adventurous activity, that you have the support, the permission of the authority for this too. And what's crucial is that the leader should lead, prepare thoroughly, ensure the, we'll come on to this, identify the risks and reduce these risks, have enough information about the young people to make sure that the activity is suitable for them, to do preparations or event of incidents and accidents together with the EVC. An important part for a leader is the ability to work dynamically, to respond to things during the visit. This isn't paperwork, but this instinct to stop something if it's not right. Assistant leaders should have received guidance from you, leaders, for their role, and they should be part of the planning process.
I'll do this bit in English. A couple of years ago, I did some monitoring work on for a group that were on Snowdon walking, and I happened to come across the assistant leader. And the question I asked the assistant leader was, have you been briefed about your role? And the honest answer was, no, I'm only here to do the numbers up. If something had happened to that visit leader, you could see that as headline news in the Daily Post. Assistant leader was only there to make the numbers up. Weren't given any kind of information. He was just there as an extra bod. If I had a penny for every time I was asked what was the ratio for any visit, I would be not living in sunny Carnarvon. I'd be somewhere else by now. But there isn't, apart from in foundation phase, there isn't a legal ratio set. The legal expectation is on effective supervision based on these 5 key principles. Can the staff team effectively manage this group doing this proposed activity at this venue in these environments at that distance from base? Now, if you apply them to your visits, you could actually see that having a stated ratio doesn't really work. It depends on the group, it depends on the activity, it depends on where you're doing that activity and how far you are from school. In the in a cyfnod sylfaen, mae wedi
In the foundation phase, it's up to 6 for visits.
It's great having all these policies, procedures and stuff, but what we don't want is that. So please can I ask you to access that information which is on SharePoint, and if you're having trouble accessing that, please get in touch. Mae ymweliadau sydd wedi cynllunio'n dda efo
Visits that have been planned well with good experiences, been a good way of dealing with what is related to any visit. What we want to see is this, the outcomes. Excellent quality learning in the open air with clear themes and outcomes, with clear planning and clear information. So you see here that there are outcomes and themes that are clearly enjoyment, confidence, social awareness, environmental awareness, activity skills, and so on. You should all have received this document, so high quality outdoor learning. If you haven't and you want a copy, please contact us and we can send them out to you. This document is available electronically too. Thank you. What we can do at the moment, as we know, we're in another lockdown, so nothing is happening at the moment, but it's essential that we follow the government's guidelines at the moment. Yes, so visits can happen with thorough risk arrangements, but not overnight or residential. Visits can't take place at the moment. You should, these are the sorts of visits that are taking place, normal visits, events in the open air, which are not on the staff, but come under these keep a simple record of in the school, who, what, why. So, for example, if you go to a local cemetery, local woods, these come into the normal visits, and planning is very light touch. If you do adventure activities or residential, clearly that need more thorough planning, and this means planning on evolve by you as leaders, that it comes to the coordinator, then the head teacher, and then the approval of the local authority. You must have 14 days of in advance, warning in advance before the start date. Question a lot of people say is what needs permission. So on the SharePoint, there's a list of things that count as challenging or adventure activities that need these approvals. Can I just ask about that, Arwel? I've done work with schools. Some schools say that they need fortnight in advance to get this. And the slide shows if you do adventure activities, you need a fortnight of warning. So if you do things in the school on or agricultural land, then that is not an adventure activity. So the 14 days notice isn't needed then. What I would say is that 80% of visitors of primary schools come into this part of the area, the ordinary, so just a simple record, who, what, why, where and when. And the head can give a blanket approval for these, so that if it's not on school grounds, but done in open air, a simple record, light touch. Clearly, if you go through things that are more adventurous, to go further away from the school, then involved comes into this definition. It's very easy to discuss visits. Say, oh, we're thinking of doing that. This is an ordinary visit, or is it an adventure visit? Clearly definitions of these, but I'd say no, 80% of the visits are definitely in the S category, the normal visits. As this shows, this is what you do at the moment. Normal visits, what these are, regular part of the curriculum. They take inside or just outside school grounds, a regular level of risk that the staff can manage, and they're all, apart from sports activities, to great disappointment in different Conwy. The normal activities, visits can take place, but we know that residential and unusual activities can't take place, and 2, 3 can't happen either. So field work and open air visits, these can happen, but not overnight visits. We have prepared for the authorities in this challenging time a way of looking at how we plan visits and by asking these questions. Is it safe? Is it legal? Is it based on evidence? Have we thought about social responsibility? Is it clear? And is it realistic in terms of what we can do? And this is available, this document is available on SharePoint, but it helps you to plan your activities. And this has been shared. I hope that every school has received this. If you haven't received this, I'll send it on at the end of this presentation. We're talking about considerations with COVID in holding visits, and we talk about these with social distancing, hygiene, eating, cleaning, equipment, and supervision, and the weather. So again, I shared this with you. This is already done for you. And it's important that you look at this planning work that's been done on your behalf. We have also, as we do for a range of visits, in terms of risking management, a template for risk management with regards to COVID. And this is there for you to adapt and to make it relevant to the sort of visits that you're holding.
Further considerations when you're doing your educational visits is visit purposes and learning outcomes, staff-student ratios, making a judgment about competency of visit leaders. Do we need to do pre-visits, venue details? Are we using external providers? What are our transport arrangements? Have we got a detailed itinerary? What activities are we using and led by a provider, or is it staff school-led activities. What is the risk benefit of this? What's the risk benefit analysis? And we'll get into that a bit. Have we DBS, first aid cover? Have we got insurance adequate for the visits that we're doing? That's just taken directly from the national guidance, and that's freely available. And it's a really good starting point for anyone organising educational visits to actually consider, have we actually considered all them considerations? Parental consent. We need informed consent for any off-site visits. For your routine visits, a blanket consent from parents is adequate. But when we're doing adventurous activities, demanding environment activities, we need specific consent from parents about that particular activity. Most schools have got this pretty well nailed, I think, by now. Os da ni'n defnyddio darparwyr,
If we use external providers, then we either need to make sure that they have the LOTC quality badge.
For organisations, we can help steer them towards the LOTC mark, or if providers don't have the LOTC mark, we ask them to complete the independent provider questionnaire, which can be downloaded from the Evolve site. The LOTC mark looks a bit like that. A lot of providers will have that working, you know, you're well aware of providers working with that quality badge. And if they haven't, the provider form looks something like that. It has been reviewed in light of COVID. There are some questions about COVID security in terms of providers on that form now. Clearly, if we're engaging in any adventurous activities, we need to ensure that the provider is licensed to do that. Now, it's not an expectation on your behalf to check that they are, but before you commit to any provider, you can contact myself or Mike Rosser, and we'll do them checks for you before you actually enter into any formal contracts with a provider. Think about any financial commitments that you're doing. Might not apply to this project per se, but thinking about what are the financial commitments if you're going to do something in light of where we're at now with the COVID restrictions. Mae yna lot ohonoch chi yn gwybod ac yn
A lot of you know about Evolve and what it is. Evolve.
For ones who might not know, Evolve is an online planning, approval, monitoring system for school visits. It actually stands for Educational Visits Online Virtual Environment. What we ask schools to do is for the visit leader to plan using the Evolve system. It's then checked by the EVC. It's then approved by the head for all visits, apart from the very simple routine visits. If it's then adventurous, it will come up for final approval by the authority automatically once the heads approve it. I'm going
to do the next part. I think we've got 10 minutes left, if that's all right. Is that correct?
Sorry.
5 minutes. Next part is a way of looking about managing risk management that is a change perhaps for a lot of you. Writing risk assessments to do it on their behalf or with, and that's a question to ask over the last 10 years. Do we have a problem? If we, with risk assessments, we've seen hundreds of these where they're just generic. They've seen them, so many of them. Is there a problem with this? Is there a problem with accepting generic risk assessments on your behalf? You see here, we put shark fishing and wearing anti-shark swimming costume and swim away quickly if you see a shark. You see how many visits we've caught where these risk assessments have been uploaded and they obviously haven't been read or adapted at all. How many of these go in front of governors and they accept them that children are going to swim with sharks? So ask the question, is it correct? And is it relevant? Is there another way of doing it? To me, what we want to look at, risk assessments for your simple activities, blanket approval ones, visits, slips and falls, that it needs to be relevant, everyone needs to be part of it. So once a year for school, and this gives a basis, the foundation for these visits. And then as you go further away from the school, activities become more complicated, then needs more intense planning. I think that we define local learning area map, but what you do locally, what then is the next step up, particularly the environmental conditions, the group, confidence and ability of the leader, and what sort of activity you're doing. So in a way, routine visit plans, general risk management for it. And then as we go to do things more complicated, we need a bit more work done. So we look at risk assessments. We're looking at these four things: staff, activity, group, and the environment. So if you make your risk assessment on these 4 points, staff, activity, group, location, environment. And what I would like to see is moving from forms like this with this matrix, which doesn't mean anything to anyone, to something which is a lot more creative. Is this a risk assessment? Is this an acceptable risk assessment? I think it is. Going to a cemetery, and it's owned by everyone. Everyone's had an opportunity to take part in preparing it. This, to me, is much more better than something that means nothing to anyone. Another visit. This was a residential visit. They've done a thought map of this, accepted by everyone, read by everyone. Much, much better in my opinion. And better of all, if you can get the children, young people, to be part of this process. This is how we know that everyone owns part of risk management. This is the important part, that everybody plans the process together. We need to look at this, but the benefits, dangers, and controls, to have these three in a context together. What you get back is some of these.
It's not a professional document. Does it meet what we require by law? Does it follow HSC 5 steps to risk assessment form?
They all do. So I'd be prefer to see this mind map for a visit than just something's just been taken and has no ownership at all. Top tips for you, and I'll leave this with you. Think about risk assessments as minutes of a meeting where matters were discussed relating to safety. Discuss and share ideas, experience, and knowledge that will improve safety and reduce risk, not a piece of paper. Try to keep the form simple. There's no correct way of doing risk assessments. There's so many different ways of doing the process. It's not what you write that protects children, but what you do. Writing a risk assessment alone does not defend any child from harm. Risk assessment processes are promoted by encouraging adults on a visit to discuss and plan together and see the value jointly of doing so. Encourage everybody to think about risk assessment as a process, not a thing. Encourage a flexible and simple format and concentrate on staff, good communication and full participation. Oh, people say, oh, I can't do risk assessment. I've never done one. You need to change that way of minding. So, well, we can do risk assessment if we use a simple mind map, do this assessment. Clearly, if we're dealing with external providers, they are responsible for risk assessment, but this discussion is important that you discuss it with them. An important part here is the work of dynamic working, responding to concerns as they arise. It's not paperwork, just a way of working. I'm going to rush forward to this finished slide. The other things, other arrangements in emergency. I'll leave this with you, and it's in the SharePoint. Can't do this. And I'm going to finish with this slide, and this is extremely important. Education, its wider meaning, means that's more than just delivering a curriculum. It means giving children opportunity to develop their life skills, and it means developing confidence, and it means developing resilience and responsibility. And don't forget that it means experience and enjoying the excitement that is to be achieved from venturing into the real world, to the center, in all the uncertainty, surprise, excitement, and fun that's available. I know that I've gone about on some of you going over things that you already know, but I'm more than happy to accept any questions from you now. There we are. Hannah, do you have a question? Oh, I thought you were waving. The burning question. I thought you had a burning question to ask. No, anybody else has a question? So just while you're thinking, just point to some of the points on you. Well, doing a risk assessment by pupils, I totally agree that this is the way forward to get the children to think about what the dangers are. Then they're aware of them, and they're more likely to behave in a way that respects these risks. So yes, definitely there. Be dynamic. You're taking them out to places that are changing. Every group is different and the weather changes. So just do things there. Need to be totally dynamic and change and adapt your plans. Anybody else wants to add anything or ask anything? I think with that way of doing risk assessments, those who have been, and we've had this battle with health and safety officers, because they like tidy forms. They think in columnar form, but we think, is it relevant? Is it right? I've seen so many of them, and they haven't been adapted. So moving, it's a brave skill to do, to change this, but everyone sees going through this process, the legal process. We've asked somebody what's happening. This would stand up in a court of law, and the answer simply is yes, it would, because there's no standard form, no right or wrong way of assessing risk. What's important is everyone's part of the process, and this is accepted. So I think it's a much way of doing it. So I can't say of everything else that you have to assess risk of COVID to start with, but with visits, it definitely is the way, and it's been received. The education officers have approved it. So don't know if you're recording that. Can we just make a fuzz over that if necessary? So if there are no other questions, I'll just say thank you very much, Adwel. And I'm aware that we've learned a lot this afternoon. So that has set the stage well, and we move on. What are these advantages, and working together and standard and having fun in the open air, and they need enjoyment. We don't want to put them off. We need them to have a good time and gain all the benefits from going out into the open air. So you're Arwel, and I hope that everybody else has received this. So Tuesday, we in future, and we'll send you the invitations out. And this is totally flexible. So I want to think by leading. I'm sure Arwel would agree with that. Remember to contact us if, for me, I am here to support you to hold these visits. So you think, I want to do this and not sure what need to do, well, contact by all means, and I'll work with you to make sure that it's not a matter of evolved computers say no, it's a matter of overcoming any problems. And or send you a SharePoint, you see when it's said, and you'll see that it's new and relevant to you now. Thank you very much, Arwel, and thank you all for giving your time. Okay. Bye.